The most dramatic and serious of the misdoings of Am Yisrael in the desert would certainly seem to be the Chet HaEgel, the sin of the golden calf. At such a special moment of the receiving of the Torah at Har Sinai, God's revelation to the Jewish people, right afterwards betraying that covenant by engaging in idolatry. The Talmud compares it to a bride who commits adultery at her wedding. However, that sin ultimately was forgiven, and Moshe intervened to save the Jewish people. Therefore, the question I'd like to deal with today is, why is it that the sins in the book of Bamidbar that are seemingly much more minor became the unforgivable sins, the sins that were not forgiven, that ultimately led to Am Yisrael not entering the land of Israel, rather all to die in the desert and to await the new generation. There's a list of sins and misdoings throughout Sefer Bamidbar, beginning with our week's Parsha, Parashat Behalotcha. On the surface, it seems to be a rich variety of sins. In Behalotcha, we have the Am Yisrael doesn't like eating the man that comes from the heavens, and instead they want meat. In Parashat Behalotcha, we're told about the story about the scouts who led to a general feeling of pessimism when they brought the reports of Eretz Yisrael back to the people. And in Parashat Korach, we learn about a rebellion against the authority of Moshe and Aaron. On the surface, it's different events. But in the heart, it's really the same story again and again. What links these stories together, a word used often in these parshiot, is it's all about tlunot. It's all about complaining. From one parsha after the other, we find endless amounts of complaints. Am Yisrael are complaining about the conditions in the desert. Now, even after identifying this common thread to the different misdoings, it's still surprising, why is it that these events, this complaining is so severe? It leads to a situation as opposed to the Chet HaEgel that the Jewish people are not forgiven. I mean, we don't have a commandment in the Torah, thou shalt not complain, which is as opposed to not committing idolatry. To answer this question, I'd like to look a little bit about what these complaints were all about. The Jewish people, they complain about the present, that in the present, instead of being able to seeing the blessings they have in their lives, the man falling from the heaven, which we're told was such a special food, instead they can only see what they're missing. What about the meat? And this ability of looking at the present and seeing always what's missing, what don't I have, and not appreciating what they do have, reflects their view not only of the present, but of the past and of the future. When looking back at Mitzrayim, instead of looking back and seeing the great event of freedom from slavery from Egypt, the land of oppression, the land that they were killing the children, slaving away, instead they look back and think about the good old days. But we used to get food for free, forgetting that the reason why the food was free was because they were slaves and they had no property of their own, and they were given food so they could eke out, so their masters could eke out some more work from them. So they have a warped view of the past, the suffering of the past. Instead of appreciating freedom, they could only imagine that it was better back then. In looking at the present, they can't see the blessings and the good in their lives. They could only see what's missing. And then they start looking at the future, the land of Israel. And looking in the future in the land of Israel, again, they don't see any hope. They don't see the positive. They could only see despair and failure. So we have a perception of reality, almost pathological, seeing only the negative. If Rav Nachman of Breslov would teach us to all look for the tov, look for the good in everything, they're always looking and finding the bad. And this is a situation that you just can't win, because however good things are going to be, there'll always be an opportunity to find the negative, the bad. We're told that Moshe, when he prayed for his sister Miriam, when she had leprosy, he had a very short tefillah. And there are two versions of Rashi. Why did Moshe pray so rapidly? In the first version, it's because he knows that if he takes longer time praying, people are going to say, his sister is sick, and what's he doing? He's in the corner praying away. And the other version of Rashi says that people are going to say that when his sister's sick, he prays for her, but for us, he wouldn't do that. Whatever you do, you just can't win. And in a situation like that, we can understand the frustration of Moshe, that instead, as by the Chet HaEgel, he's willing to sacrifice himself to save Am Yisrael. Here, he's so frustrated, he tells God, let me die, because I just can't take it any longer. Because the situation of this perception of reality, you're not going anywhere. You can't win. Things will always be bad, and this is the frustration. And as opposed to sin, however serious it is, such as the Chet HaEgel, the sin is an event that takes place at one particular point in time. Once you've passed that, you could rectify what you've done. You could try to make amends. You could do tshuva. But the problem with the complaining, it's not about doing. It's about their sense of being. It's about their whole reality. It's a reality which is 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And when that reality is so warped, there's nothing to do but to wait for another generation that maybe hasn't been through the traumatic events that apparently this generation has been through, having lived as slaves in Egypt, and wait for that next generation that will be the right generation to begin the life in the land of Israel. And I think this message is important not only for the past, but also to understand our present. Hoshea ben Shalom, the founder and head of Beit Yisrael, a pre-military academy located in Yerushalayim, has made the point that the past is now a mirror of our present. When we look back at the complaining during the period of the desert, it's natural for us to be shocked about how petty people could be during such great times. We have this dramatic generation, freedom from Egypt, the giving of the Torah in Har Sinai, entering the land of Israel. And in these great times, people somehow could be so petty. It's so frustrating and unbelievable when we look back with perspective at how people were acting. But then Hosea challenges us to look at our present. We too are living in one of the most significant and remarkable times in the history of the Jewish people, in the history of the world. The last century, from the traumas of the Holocaust, the rebirth of the state of Israel, the challenges and opportunity that the state of Israel has, despite this hour of greatness, unfortunately, so many of us are still, as that generation in the desert, are concentrating and being involved on such petty issues. Look back at the Bamidbar and realize the lack of sense they had of the time they're living, and maybe this could help inspire us to realize the greatness of our times and the greatness that we are challenged to be. Shabbat Shalom.